This is an anti-supremacist rant. If you are a liberal and you think you are better than conservatives for any reason, you are a supremacist. If you are a conservative and you think you're better than liberals in some way, you are a supremacist. If you are a Christian and you think you're better than somebody else for any reason, maybe you think you're more loving, maybe you think you're smarter, maybe you think you're more deserving of love or money or comfort or safety or protection, you are a supremacist. If you think that makes you better, you are a supremacist, right? Like you can have more education than somebody else and not be better than them. Just different, just more educated. You can have more wealth or less wealth than another human being. That doesn't make you better. Just different, just more or less wealthy. Some of y'all know what you are, and you are okay with that. Some of y'all are out here and you're white supremacists and you don't know it, and I love you anyways. You could be a white supremacist. You could be a black supremacist. You could be an Islamic supremacist. You could be a Christian supremacist. You could be an American supremacist. Let's see. You can be a pro-abortion supremacist. You can be a currency supremacist, right? It's all money. It's all pretend value, right? Symbolic, physical symbols of non-physical value. So is one better than the other? Not unless you're a supremacist. You can be an atheist supremacist. You can be a scientific supremacist. There are people who think that some sciences are more science than others. You can be an intelligence supremacist. You can be a cultural supremacist. You can be a language supremacist. You can be an ignorance supremacist. There are people who think they are better than other people. It might be you. I don't know you. You may be one of those people who thinks you are better than somebody else because you're not interested in the things that they are interested in, because you don't care about the information that they have access to. Because you're not interested in learning the things that they know. And you think that that makes you better somehow. You're a fucking supremacist. What else here? Poverty, education, intellect, governments, liberals, conservatives, whites, blacks, all the rest, language, religion. My point here is very simple. If you think you are better than another human being in some way, for any reason, and it could be any person. If you think you're better than Donald Trump, if you think you're better than Joe Biden, if you think you're better than your neighbor, if you think you're better than the person who's being arrested on the side of the road, if you think you're better than the people who did the Tide Pod challenge, you're a supremacist. Just a little bit. You are entertaining supremacist ideas by entertaining the idea that you might be better than somebody else just cause. At the end of the day, even if it's just a small thing, like somebody cut you off in traffic and now you think that person doesn't know how to drive, I'm better at driving than them. Ring the alarm. Good job. Good for you. You caught yourself in a supremacist moment. Why am I applying the word supremacist to so many different things? Because if we don't start to acknowledge the root of supremacist ideology, then we will never reach a point where we can eliminate it. Anytime you judge yourself against someone else and call yourself better, you are entertaining supremacist ideology. You are entertaining the beginning of a supremacist mindset. And you're probably thinking too highly of yourself. Just a little too highly of yourself. Because at the end of the day, we are all human beings. We are all shaped by the circumstances of our birth. We are shaped by our biology, our genetic and environmental and cultural and financial and racial and other circumstances, the stuff that we didn't really get to choose. When we're talking about like practical application of ideas, realistically, no human being chose this shit. None of us here alive today chose any of this shit. Most of the stuff that is part of our existence as human beings was here before we got here, and we didn't do much to change it. Very few of us can say that we influenced the entire culture of wherever we live or are from, right? The average human being hasn't done that shit. The average human being is not better than the next human being. We are that similar. We're like birds, but we're not even that different. Like, we're not even like crows versus robins. Like, yeah, they're all birds, but like, we're not even that different. We're all crows. Some of us are black, some of us are brown, some of us are albinos. We're all human beings. We're all one species. And this idea that any little thing, whatever it is, your beliefs, your hair texture, your color, your skin color, eye color, the people you follow on Twitter, the books you read, the information you know, or the stuff that you can create, no matter what it is, if you think that any part of you makes you better than another human being, that's the problem. That way of thinking is the source of all war. That way of thinking is the origin of all supremacist ideology. And we as a society, we as a species can never eliminate it unless we as individuals begin to individually and independently eradicate it within ourselves. Anything can be the fertile ground for supremacist seeds to sprout. And the more you buy into that idea, the more you feed your own ego and say, you know what? I am better than so-and-so because I brushed my teeth today. You know, I am better than this person because I got off of my ass and I went to the gym. I am better than that person over here because I would never say that to whoever. I would never do X, Y, and Z. So I can't even understand them. Like, I don't even want to be around them. Like, they need to go somewhere. They need to fix themselves. Couldn't be me. Never me. The supremacist. You're a supremacist. That's a supremacist way of thinking. And it's so casual and it's so common in the smallest ways. But this is why so many world religions, including the one I was birthed into, the Christian tradition, specifically Seventh-day Adventists, but like, you know, there is this understanding that in order to be spiritually evolved, in order to be spiritually successful, right? One of the main goals of pretty much every religion is to release judgment. There are others, right? Release attachment. Show love for yourself, show love for others, show love for the creator, the environment, right? There are other tenets that are kind of universal, but this one about judgment is one of them, and we are all failing at it. The Christians are failing at it, the Muslims are failing at it, the Buddhists are failing at it, the spiritual people who don't have a specific name for their spiritual tradition or beliefs, y'all failing at it too. You're either failing publicly or you're doing a really good job of failing in private. Whatever your life is, right? I'm sure, because I know I've experienced it myself. I am sure that you, if you're watching this, have thought to yourself at some point that you were better than somebody else because of some superficial thing. Or maybe because of a big thing. There's so many genocides, ongoing and historic, that are just, the root is supremacy. The root is this idea that some people are more deserving of life than others. Some people are less deserving of safety than others. That way of thinking starts with you. It starts with me. It starts with each of us individually accepting this idea that it is okay to cast judgment on somebody else based on what they're doing. Just because we don't like it, just because we disagree. That's not the choice I would make. Whether you pray on your knees or on your face or standing up, whether you face east or west, whether you cover your hair or not, whether you worship on Saturday or Sunday, whether you put yeast in the bread or not, whether you eat meat or not, does the meat have blood in it? Yeah, all of this stuff. I don't know what's right and what's wrong for you. I can only speak for what's right and wrong for me, right? I can only speak to my own experience. But what I can say is that I disagree with the intensity with which some of these beliefs are defended and promoted. And I personally am disturbed and disgusted by the level of supremacy that I was taught to hold in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I know we're not the only ones, so if you're listening to this and you're not an Adventist, you may relate to this as well. We were taught that we are the chosen people, that God handpicked this church, this specific religious tradition, the Seventh-day Adventists, to be the chosen people to represent God. And anyone can be a member of the chosen. You just have to get baptized into the church and follow all of the tenets. And if you get baptized into the church and you choose to follow all of the tenets, then you will be a member of the chosen. And you will be saved at the end of days. And that makes you special. And that makes you responsible for sharing this truth with other people. But it doesn't make you responsible for their acceptance of the truth. You're barely responsible for yourself because technically Jesus got you. It really depends on like the tradition, right? And it depends on the person you're talking to. Even though we talk about being non-judgmental, they do teach that and they preach that. Don't judge other people. We are not supposed to judge. God is their judge, right? But how many times have you heard somebody say, well, I'm not judging, or it's not my place to judge, before they say some judgmental shit? Me, I've heard it, I've said it. We as human beings have this ingrained, embedded way of comparing ourselves to others and always wanting to be on top. We are constantly putting ourselves in competition with other people and we don't even think about it. And I don't know if this is because of something natural within us. We are an interdependent species. Like, we need community in order to thrive as a species. But then there's also the tribalistic aspect of us that is kind of, it's traceable to the earliest human beings. So it's kind of maybe just baked into our biology in a way, to have the in-group and the out-group. And then, you know, you root for the in-group. Yeah, that's my team, that's my in-group, I'm for it. And then anybody outside of that in-group is the out-group. They're all outsiders, we're not for them, they're not fam. That's kind of a natural way of being human, right? So I think this idea that we should transcend judgment and become a non-judgmental species, that's a call to evolution. That's a call for us to be better than our own nature. Not better than other people, better than ourselves as individuals, right? To rise above the world, to rise above humanity, is not just to rise above the other people who are doing the wrong stuff. It is to rise above your damn self. That is why judgment is so harmful, because when you look at another person, your brain sees you. You're looking at you. And when you cast that judgment onto that person, you limit yourself in what you are capable of doing. You limit yourself in what you are capable of forgiving for yourself. And you create division where we don't need it. We as a species need to come together. We need to be working together. We need to be cooperating if we are going to survive. And you're not helping when you look at this other person and say, oh my God, he voted for Trump. Ugh. He voted for Biden. And that's just the US. Like, there's division all over the world, right? And the election shit in the United States at this point in time, at the time that I'm recording this, is really the least depressing of the examples that I could bring up. But supremacy is real. It leads to real, terrible, and violent consequences. And it all starts with you. It starts with each of us as individual people making individual choices moment to moment to either judge another person as less than or see them as equal regardless of how they show up. That's what real compassion is really about. So that's the end of my rant. If you're a supremacist, let me know in the comments, because